Welcome, everyone, to the pub. This is Manny's Irish Pub Sports Betting Show, powered by the Predictive Playbook and presented to you by SportsMemo TV. And I am joined, and I'm really psyched just to do these shows again. And I think we'll get back to doing them just about every single day. Yeah, once we get maybe through this round of the playoffs, we'll have a little bit more time. But I am joined by the Iceman. I know him as Jesse Shull, but suddenly he is the Iceman, and he can explain what that is all about. I think of George Gervin.
Yes.
I know Rob. Yes,
Good
Rob
reference.
Veno would think the same thing.
Absolutely. Yes. I like that reference, John.
Clearly, you guys are showing your age because if you come from my generation,
My father told me about him.
Any reference to the Iceman is a Top Gun reference with Val Kilmer.
Oh, that's right, when he did that with his jaw, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's hard when you come from 1977. It's hard, Jesse. But he was a hell of a player.
Yeah, he was. He was kind of like the they weren't even rivals, but you put him and Julius Erving in the same category, I think. Gervin could take, over a game, and both of them had that finger roll that nobody else had. Mm-hmm. Now everybody has it. The game has evolved. So I thought go ahead, Rob.
Real quick, the way they used to play it in the ABA is kind of like the way they play it now, right? When they, ran with that red, white, and blue ball and shot a lot of threes and played wide open basketball. It's kind of what today is. But go ahead, let's get it rolling here. I'm sorry about that. Just reminiscing.
Well, I have a fondness for Tony Finn, and he's probably not listening. He's, I don't know where. I mean, where could he possibly be? I mean, he could be in one of 10 places he possibly might or should be at, maybe. I don't know. I'm sure. I just hope he's safe and, doing well. But we miss him. But I did the NBA angle of the day for Mr. Ranieri. And Mr. Veno, you were on the show, I believe.
Yes.
And I'm going to show it to you right here. And this is that's not the one I wanted to show. That's the one I wanted to show. Now, this is the angle of the day that I put together. So, and this is a serious bet. This qualifies as a 3-unit bet. You're going to bet over in games lined at 210 or more. And that sounds low by today's standards. It sounds like just about every single game, like last year, would have been part of it. And the team involved in the game is struggling, losing 60% of their games on the season. Or they're losing, or they're winning 40% or fewer of their games on the season. Take your pick. The team is also playing on back-to-back nights. That means zero rest. And I heard Ski Profit talk about rest, I think, today with the Pelicans and the Knicks. I can't agree with him more than what he said on that show. And the opponent in this matchup has a winning record. The over is 95-45 with 5 pushes for 68% winning bets over the last 5 seasons. Bet the over is what I say in the Pacers versus Warriors game tonight. But there's more. And, this is because I haven't seen Finn in like 2 weeks. So I created this subset based on the stuff that I've learned from Tony Finn. And it goes like this. It's the same set of parameters, but then Tony Finn is if the team went through the fast food drive-through window the previous night. And that technically means after the previous game was over. Or if they have an off day, they went at nighttime for dinner. And Steve Merrill got at least 3 stitches in his fingers trying to catch the falling knife. The over then is bet over 12.5 players heading to the locker room in the first half. What do you think of that, Jesse Shull?
That sounds like something that Tony would say. Absolutely.
I learned it from him. The drive-through parameter is immeasurable. It's invaluable. You can't use it really against the Patriots in past history because Brady made certain that nobody went through the drive-through, just like he does in Tampa Bay. It's all organic, all good food. But when you go through some of those drive-throughs, even in Vancouver, Jesse, I don't know if you've ever been to Vancouver, but I imagine that they have some just dreaded drive-through restaurants in Vancouver.
Actually, they got great restaurants in Vancouver, but I got to say I haven't been from a drive-through in 25 years, let's say.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's old enough, Rob. When you were a kid, do you know what a drive-through movie theater is?
Yeah, the drive-in, right?
Yeah, well, that's right. It was a drive-in movie theater, right?
You have the speaker next to your car, and you're watching a parking lot with, 400 of your best friends
sitting on the hood.
Yeah, they should bring those back. Actually,
I think so too. The land's too expensive where you and I live, Rob. It would have
or
to
the
be
drive-in restaurants with the waitresses on roller skates and the trays that stick on your window. And I gotta say, back in those days, the burgers were actually pretty good at those places compared to what you get out of a drive-through today.
There is a place that does do they come out to you in the car. I don't know if they roller skate though. Isn't that Sonic or something? Yeah,
Sonic. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But when those actually were a big deal, those precede me even, Jesse. I didn't visit any of those. Those are more like the 1950s.
We still have one in my neighborhood about an hour's drive from my hometown where they come out in roller skates and serve right to the window.
Well, we wouldn't be Manny's Pub without Max on record asking about the PGA Tour, and we appreciate that very much. But that starts for me next week. And I believe we'll be able to do some stuff with Nick Borman, the PGA expert at Wagertalk, and also David Behrman, if time permits, with the schedules and everything. That would be good to do. He was both of them were outstanding. Borman went 8-0 in the shows that he did. It was either 8-0 or 9-0. Like if you tailed everything he told you to do, you made money. And Berman was like 19 out of 21. So he, not nearly as good as Borman. I mean, my God, 19-2. Which would you rather have, 19-2 or 9-0?
I'll take 19-2.
Yeah, it's quite the combo, Borman and Bierman.
You could definitely make a show with those two names.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll have to think about that. But anyway, the reason I brought that up, Jesse, is that you're on an 11-1 run right now in all sports, and you were 10-0, I think.
10-0 heading into wild card weekend. Stumbled a little bit on that Saturday, but I hit my game of the year on Sunday. And with hoops, 17-0. If you look at my 8-0 college run and 9-0 NBA run.
Impressive.
Yeah, we got to actually stop and clap for that one because that's a good one.
I mean, I always stand up and bow, but
that's a good one.
But I was telling John that at this time of year, that's what it all comes together. We've seen the regular season. We're well into conference play in college hoops, so we're not looking at Rutgers playing Holy Cross or Iowa,
which is better.
William and Mary. It's harder to handicap those games than it is to see Big Ten teams playing Big Ten teams and SEC teams playing SEC teams. You got more data to work with. If you're decent at your job, you should be doing well right now.
And I do think, without a shadow of a doubt now, I used to think of William and Mary as Williamsburg, Virginia, where the Golden Horseshoe Golf Course is one of the best in the country. And yes, you can play it. It's public. And if you are a golfer and haven't played it, you've got to put that in the bucket list. But Steve Merrill lives in that area. And the more he talks about William and Mary, I think they should change the school name instead of William and Mary and just call it Steve Merrill. Or Steve and Merrill. Steve and Merrill. That would be a man and a woman, right? Merrill. What is the woman's name? I'm thinking of the actress. Meryl something. Meryl Steubing?
Meryl Streep.
Yes, there you go. I had the right letter. But William and Mary, and I bring it up kidding around with Steve's name and him not being able to defend himself very well right now, but I had the pleasure of having Northeastern on the road at William and Mary, Williamsburg, Virginia, as a 10-point favorite, and they lost by 1. And I think that's the only one of the 2 games that William and Mary has won all year. So I guess I'm kind of proud of it. Like, I mean, there's only a few games you could have picked that you would be a loser betting against William and Mary. And I was able to identify one of them. And not only that, it was a double-digit favorite.
Takes talent.
Well, the difference is that instead of hitting 64% right now, for the season, I'd be hitting like 64.2 if that game would have won. So it really doesn't matter. But I found it comical that as bad as William and Mary was, they were coming off their first win of the year. I think it was the first cover of the year, and I thought there's no way they're going back to back. They're not going to shoot near 50% 2 games in a row, and they actually shot over 50% against my Northeastern team. But Rob, how are things over at Wagertalk? What do you got going on over there?
Yeah, Wagertalk. For myself, I've got one of the 4 conference divisional round games up right now. I got pretty good opinions on all of those guys. Last week, not so much, but this week, I think better opinions. Basketball tonight, more heavily towards the college than the NBA. There's only 3 games being played in NBA. I'm on one of them. But otherwise, it's business as usual over there. Last night, NBA had a 2-2 night, 2 up, 2 down. The 2 that didn't win, one disappointing, one not so disappointing, just a bad handicap. So move on, see what we get through tonight.
Yeah, I guess I would like to talk about one of the divisional games. I hope the game I'm talking about isn't part of your game, Rob. It's the Buffalo Bills are visiting the Kansas City Chiefs. And this line movement is already down to 1.5 after opening at, 3.5. And just tons of money coming in on the Bills. But still more than 2 full days to go before this kicks off. It's actually 2.5 days. So this is a Sunday game at 6:30. And it's at Arrowhead Stadium. And I actually shared some... I thought it was some pretty good info here on the Bet On It show that we did yesterday with Ralph and Kelly, and it's just a lot of fun. I mean, all the shows are fun, but you get 2 guys like Ralph and I that are just complete numbers guys, and we just love to keep drilling down. And the stat I want to share with you guys is. I'll just get to it real quick here. Playoff games in which a road team won the last game by 24 more points. Now, you can tear this apart. You can agree with it. You can disagree with it. You can say this is idiotic. It means nothing. Or you can say, oh, my God, I'm going to go to the window with this. So Buffalo won big. They won by 30 points, I think, over the New England Patriots. I had the Patriots, my lone loser in the playoffs so far. I'm 4-1. So thank God for the bounce back, because that was the first game. And you start out the playoffs losing by 30. That's usually not a good sign. But teams that won by 24 more points are 12-0 straight up. 13-9 against the number. And the under is 15-7 for 69%. And that supports the Bills and the under. And playoff teams where both teams are coming off double-digit wins, like Kansas City is and the Bills. The road team is, and in a situation where the road team is the dog and not a dog of more than 4.5 points. 13-8 straight up, 14-6-1 for 70% winners, and the under again a slight lean at 12-9. Let's start with Rob. And do you agree or disagree with my increasing love affair with the Buffalo Bills and their ability to win this game outright?
Well, I don't know that I strongly either agree or disagree, John. We did this game, Tony Mejia and I, as part of panel videos for Wagertalk. So I'll give you what I had for notes for that show. Really, Tony had covered a lot of the ground, and I'll try and work that in because he went first on that show. But I went right to the we got 3 regular season meetings, and all of these, 3 of the 4 games have earlier season meetings. This is one of them. They all took place real early in the year. This one happened to take place October the 10th in Arrowhead. Buffalo wins that game. They, I guess you could say at the time they got their revenge. Obviously, they would rather have playoff revenge than regular season revenge, but they win that game 38-20. They outgained KC by 44 yards, 436 to 392. But what I remember most about that game as I was going back through it is you go back to the first 6 games of the season with Kansas City, and their games were nothing but turnover fiascos. Drive up and down the field, gain a bunch of yards, get inside the other team's 25, 20-yard line and turn the ball over. Patrick Mahomes was just not – it wasn't all his fault. There were a lot of tip passes, freakish stuff, but they were a turnover machine. This game happened to be one of those. They lost the turnover margin in that game. Kansas City did 4-0. One of those 4 was a pick 6 for 7 of Buffalo's points. They fumbled the first quarter kickoff on their own 34. They threw the pick 6. After the pick 6, they drive 67 yards all the way to the Buffalo 8-yard line, going in for a score, throw another interception. Late fourth quarter, they drive all the way to the Buffalo 15, and they fumble, lose another score. In the second quarter, they're at the Buffalo 32, down 17-10, right before halftime, with a chance to close to 17-13 if they choose to try the 49-yard field goal and make it. Instead, they went for it. They didn't get it. And Buffalo wound up going the other way for a touchdown right before halftime. So, if you count the turnover on downs, Buffalo had 14 points, only 7 off of 4 real turnovers, which is pretty good out of the Chiefs' defense. But the Chiefs maybe swung that game right there at halftime by going for it on 4th down and missing. They cost themselves in that game probably, modest estimate, 17 points with drives that should have been scores that didn't end up as scores. I think, to me, guys, the biggest thing in this game, the most important factor, and again, I don't come from statistical, technical trends or any of that. I come mostly from situation and fundamentals. The Tre'Davious White injury for Buffalo, when it happened against New Orleans 7 games ago, was, at the time, when it happened, real time with the announcers and everything, it was basically Chicken Little, the sky has fallen. There's no way Buffalo can win a Super Bowl without Tre'Davious White on the corner. That's it, their shot. Then 7 weeks go by, and you don't hear this guy's name anymore. Buffalo keeps winning. Their pass defense is number 1 in the league. No mention of Tre'Davious White whatsoever. I think there's a reason for that. The next 7 games that they played 6 of them. 3 were against New England, who doesn't threaten you through the air whatsoever. They played the Atlanta Falcons, where Russell Gage was their number 1 wide receiver that day. At the end of the season, they really didn't threaten anybody through the air. They played Carolina, which had the 29th pass offense in the league. They played the Jets with Zach Wilson at the end of the year. The only team they played those last 7 weeks without Tre'Davious White on the corner that could throw the football was Tampa Bay. And what Tampa Bay do to them? Tampa Bay threw for 351 yards and scored 33 points. To me, I feel like this is a week where Buffalo's corner, that injury in particular, gets exposed. They haven't had to deal with anybody other than Tampa that could throw the football and show that weakness. Of course, when you have Tyreek Hill and the receivers that Casey has and Pat Mahomes at quarterback, you can do that. So I think Kansas City's going to be just fine scoring. I think Buffalo's going to be just fine scoring. I'm not really a lot is made of improvements in the Kansas City defense by a lot of the stuff you listen to, right? OKC's so much improved. Last 3 weeks, I don't know that I'm seeing it or buying it, to tell you the truth. And I think Buffalo gets to them here. The fact that Buffalo has learned to run the football with Devin Singletary, which they really didn't do all season, right? They're predominantly throwing team. But now the last 4 weeks or so, they've run it pretty good. And I still think you can run a little on KC. So I think both teams are going to score, John. I think the biggest part of that angle that I would be on the other side of in my betting would be over. It's 53.5 right now. The weather in Arrowhead, in fact, the weather in all 3 of these stadiums, Tampa's a given, right? You're going to have good weather. Green Bay's the only place where you're going to have what I saw this morning feels like -3. I think it was 11 degrees, game time -3 feels like. But good weather here for a night game, 35, 38 degrees in KC. I think both offenses are the best units on the field. They got 58 the first time, 38-20. With all the mistakes that I pointed out for you guys, KC gave away points. Buffalo recovers a kickoff on the KC 34 and doesn't score. They only get 7 points off of 4 takeaways. 53.5 to me just seems too low. It's a really good game. I could see it going either way, but I think 53.5, that number, and it was bet down today. I think it was like 54.5, 55 this morning, and it came straight down. So somebody feels something about the under. Of course, it had gone up to 55 to start with, so maybe that's just take back. I'm not sure. But I like over 53.5.
Yeah, I don't know why in the world you would ever bet the under in that matchup. I mean, it's just it's pretty dangerous. If you're going to lose money, I'd lose money betting the over. I don't see how that game plays into the mid 40s. You know, it just
You set me up pretty good.
Yeah, I'm looking at you smiling. I'm thinking Jesse probably did it. He's probably on under.
Well, I mean, it's it's all respectful.
Your stats, your angles on the game suggest Buffalo in the under, correct?
Correct.
And my problem with that is not great line value. I mean, the line's moved the other way. Already, Buffalo is the road team. You'd like to be getting at least 2.5, if not 3. And you're not really, how significant is that 1.5 going to be? So not great value betting on Buffalo. I would say, in my opinion, if you like the under or Buffalo, which I tend to lean toward both, I think the value is greater by taking the first half line, especially when you given the history of Kansas City. I'm sure you guys remember over the years how many games has Kansas City been losing at halftime, completely out of it at times, and come back to win. I'm sure you guys remember the Super Bowl against San Francisco. They're down 10 points in the fourth quarter. It looks like all San Francisco has to do is keep possession of the ball, have a long sustained drive, which they had success doing. And what does Shanahan come out and do? He calls a 20-yard pass for Garoppolo that gets picked off and lets them back into the game. Unbelievable. But I can think of playoff games against the Texans and the Titans where they just got obliterated in the first half or the first quarter even, and then came storming back to win those games. I haven't seen a team win so many games that they probably didn't deserve to win, or they certainly didn't look like they deserved to win at halftime, as Kansas City has. And so I think if you like Buffalo, you're going to look for them to get off to a good start. And the points you're getting are going to be far more significant when the first half can end in a tie and the game cannot end in a tie.
That's a real good point.
I'll also point out that last week against Pittsburgh, another slow start for their offense. 7 of the first 8 possessions in that game resulted in punts. It looked like a guarantee to go under the first half line. And then inexplicably, the floodgates just opened. Kansas City started scoring points like crazy. And then a turnover, and they score a touchdown with just seconds left on the clock to go into the break up 21-7 when it should have been 14-7.
Great point.
And I think real quick
about this.
Last year's playoff game in Arrowhead, Buffalo doesn't really capitalize on all the early chances that they had. They're winning 9-0 in the second quarter, and they go to the half losing because they couldn't capitalize. They only wound up with 9 points. I think it was 14-9 Kansas City at the half in that game. You can't leave that team. You can't let them hang around. It's just, and I would say the same about Buffalo. You don't really want to let Buffalo hang around either. If either one of these teams has opportunity early to close the door quickly, you got to do it because Josh Allen's only getting better. Kansas City's always going to be able to strike like lightning. And I do think that they'll get to a weakness for Buffalo this week. So we'll see. The Kansas City slow starts, somehow they make up for them, boy. Somehow they make up for them, especially at home. Not so much on the road, but especially at home.
Well, I'll throw this out to you, and this gets credit to Ralph Michaels, because I didn't know this, and I learned it by being on the show. So you have a team that scored 40 or more points in the Chiefs, and did you know the following week in the playoffs they're 8-17 against the number, but they are 4-0 against the number the last 4, and both teams qualified. The Chiefs did the same thing. The Chiefs scored 42. And it's the first time, according to Ralph, in 20 years that two teams that both scored 40 or more points in the previous game are facing off. So when you look at that just directly, there's two teams that scored 35 or more points that have faced off the following week in the playoffs, and 13-2 to the under for 87%. So now, I just got done saying I would be a fool to bet the under in a game that appears two offenses that could just lay up the scoreboard. But I think what Ralph's stuff is saying is that regression is in the air, and this could actually be, a 28-24 type of game, maybe even lower. Any thoughts on that? I thought that angle that Ralph gave was really good because to me it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And on this show, we'll try to give counters to both sides. My counter to that would be that neither one of these teams plays ball control offense. It's not like you have one side like you do in a lot of these games. You say maybe San Francisco, Green Bay, right? The talk is San Francisco's got a great running game, keep Aaron Rodgers off the field. Even though Green Bay's really high scoring, San Francisco's been 23 or better in 9 of their last 11, so they can score too. In this case, you got two very, very fast-paced offenses that even if you play umbrella-style defense because you want to avoid chunk plays, you don't want to let Tyreek Hill you don't want to let Stephon Diggs, they still – and Pat Mahomes had to learn that this year because when I went back and talked about those first 6 games, that was the biggest problem with Kansas City. They didn't want to adjust and go down the field methodically. They wanted to get there too quick. Since then, I'd say the last 9 games, it's been a whole different story because they got guys that run after the catch where you don't have to throw a 40-yard pass in order to get 40 yards. You could throw an 8-yard pass and get 40 yards with them. So I think when you're going to get that many possessions, guys, you're going to get these offensive possessions. It's not going to be a 9 or 10 possession game. Each team's going to get 13, 14 cracks with the ball. And just sheer numbers tell me that there's enough opportunity there with as good as they are to score points, and that's not factoring in the potential sack and fumble, the potential pick 6, which happened in the first game for an extra 7 points. So I would still find it hard to be under 53.5 just because of these, the matchup. I guess because I play matchup so much, matchup based. I think the styles just lend themselves that way. The defenses could play good, and the game could still land 34-20, right? I mean, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for points in this game because of the way they play.
Yeah, I agree with both sides of the debate here. Which one is the better side?
We won't know, right? Until the game's over, we won't know the 2020 hindsight.
Just based on line value, though, since the total has been bet down, the first half total that I'm seeing right now hasn't really. That you can still get decent line value. You could get either 27 or 27.5, and that I think that's more valuable than the 53.5 being bet down from 55.
And I think that's where the in-game betting comes in. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, the real good thing about the 53.5 that it is now is that when you're betting totals, and as much as I bet totals, 54 and 55 are key numbers inside the 50s. You can find a lot of game scores that land 54 and 55. So once you can get under that, 53 is kind of a dead number. Not a lot of combinations that land 53. So once you can get underneath, 55 is a hard number to bet into because 28-27, 31-24, 38-17. I mean, there's so many game scores that land 55. It's hard. But when they bring it down, they give you 2 numbers back. If you're going to bet over in this game, they just gave you back 55 and 54 and sit it there at 53.5. So, again, we talk a lot and we analyze games an awful lot. But in the end, like Jesse's saying there, we're just betting against numbers. Really, the bottom line is we're betting against numbers. And a good bet or a bad bet is really in relation to what the number is. You can have all the analysis in the world, but still in the end, you got to know what's a good number to attack and what's a not so good number to attack. And I think 53.5 or anybody out there that's looking to bet over, now's your opportunity because they just gave you 2 real key numbers back where you can cash your ticket, which you couldn't do this morning if you played it early.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Because even 24-24, you could win.
Yeah, you get a little overtime, right?
Yep, and get the touchdown. Or 2 field goals. I mean, wouldn't matter much. Yeah. So, segueing into that, one of the things I mentioned also is the 28-point pivot level that is more common in college football than it is the NFL regular season. But in the playoffs, the 28-point level, offensively or defensively allowed, is critical. And I'll tell you what the numbers are here. And then you can tell me whether you subscribe to this or you just think it's coincidental. I'll tell you right off, I think it's pretty critical. And this does not mean I'm on the Kansas City Chiefs, because the Bills could easily score 28 in their own right. But the line right now, the way it is, and Rob, you said it went down to 53.5 now?
Yeah, it's almost universal at this point. I see 154 still out there on the Wagertalk odds screen right now.
So with the line where it's at, that is basically implying a 28-26 Kansas City win. So then you have to ask yourself, do you think the Chiefs are going to score 28 points against the Bills or more? My model actually has an 82% probability that KC scores more than 28. So I initially have a lean towards the over, but that does not mean any stretch of the imagination I'm on Kansas City, because Buffalo, when they score 24 or more points, have outstanding ATS records, especially over the last two years. It's pretty remarkable. So they kind of offset. But generally, with all playoff teams that score 28 or more points, are 31-5 straight up, 25-9-2 against the number, 32-4 over under, and that's playoff home teams scoring 28 or more. Playoff teams that score 27 or fewer points in home games, get this, are 28-29 straight up, 19-36 against the number, and the over under is 10 overs against 46 unders over the last 10 years of playoff games. So you either as soon as you get 28 or more, your chances of winning and covering are measurably better than if you don't reach that level. So do you think that's a 10-year aberration, or do you think that's really what maybe goes on in these war rooms, that how do we figure out how to score 28 to ensure that we have a high probability of winning the game? Let's start with Jesse on this one.
Well, I just had a look at Bet365, and the team total for Kansas City is 27.5, and the VIG is -105. So based on what you're telling me, I think that's a better bet than the over. If you're betting the over because you think Kansas City is going to score 28 points, you might as well just hit that team total.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I do officially like that Kansas City team total. And like I said, that doesn't mean that I'm thinking that Kansas City is going to win this game outright. But, I mean, historically the numbers are there, but you cannot underestimate the Buffalo Bills offense either. And as much as the data says under, I see perfectly clear what Rob is saying about that, the over, and you get 2 free numbers taking the over. And then I go right to my in-game betting, which has been I've been hot with it, both in the NBA the last couple of weeks and the NFL. And I think I would consider doing a pre-flop 50% over. If you bet $100, you put $50 pre-flop before the game starts at whatever number it is, 53.5. And then you hope for, the teams to play that first quarter like they're playing in the mud. And lo and behold, you get 46.5, or even 48.5 would be a much, much better number. And you add 25% and 25%. And then all of a sudden you have your $100 bet, but you have 2 other legs that have a much easier time of going over than a 53.5. But I have to admit, I did that in the Tampa Bay Bucks game against the Eagles. And Rob, I know we're called homers, but I had a 5% on the Tampa Bay Bucks. I actually was scared because I thought this was going to be just an absolute blowout. And when I think like that I'm so sure, 27 years of doing this, and you know what I'm talking about. When you're really, really confident, you think, "Oh my God, this is huge." You start to like lay in bed and start thinking like, what could go wrong? Like what could the Eagles do to win this game and bring complete shame to my handicapping prowess. But there, I was planning 50% Tampa Bay with the line, and in hindsight, I learned that when the line comes down as much as it did, and it came down a ton in that last hour, which I'll admit it scared me. There's something I don't know here, and suddenly my 5%er on Tampa Bay looked bad. Like there's something I'm missing here for this line to be going the wrong direction. So personally, I put 50% down, and then watching it at a local watering hole, I'm looking for the Eagles to get out to a hot start and score first. Well, it never happened, and that's the risk of doing the in-game betting. Sometimes you just don't get that opportunity, but at the same time, when you don't, your 50% pre-flop bet is going to win like 90% of the time. So there's nothing wrong with that either. But like Jesse said, you don't know until the game starts, right?
Yeah, you really don't. A couple of things on that. I think, John, you said and 28. I mean, I don't think that's a 10-year or however long. I think you said it was a 10-year deal. I don't think that's a 10-year aberration. 28 is a sizable number to be scoring points, and both these teams capable, like you said. I think you said, do they go into the war room and say, how do we get to 28, or how do we defend against 20? I think both of these teams go into their war room saying, how do we get more than 28? Because they're both fear the other's offense for sure. So you have that going for you. When you talk about the Chiefs' opportunity to get to 28, and 28's a tricky number again because you're talking about all touchdowns, right? 4 touchdowns. You don't want any field goals when you're playing. All touchdowns. And then you could take the field goal afterward to get over that number. But for me, I just went through that whole first game where they scored 20 and gave away points like crazy to the 8-yard line, throw an interception, to the 15-yard line, fumble the ball. Don't kick a field goal when you have the opportunity. I mean, when you think of it that way, you have to believe that Kansas City's able to get to 28 in this game. They got 20 without any of that, with a 4-0 turnover margin deficit. And Buffalo, if they don't get the pick six, and I take that off their score, they have 31, which is still a big number. They got 31 legitimate points in that game, not off of 10-yard drives because they recovered a fumble on the 10. They had legitimate drives for those points. So, boy, oh boy, if the game repeats itself, and seemingly every time they play recently, since they become this, I don't want to call them rivals yet, but people want to make Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes out to be AFC rivals. Since they played in these big games, they've tended to go over. Neither defense can figure out a way to stop the other team. There's just too many answers out of Andy Reid on one side and too many answers out of Buffalo's Brian Dable on the other side. So I would probably stick with that at this number, 53.5. I think it probably gets over. If it doesn't, I mean, I'm sure I'll have I'll sit by myself and I'm sure I'll make reasons and excuses why it didn't get over, but I think logic directs me in that direction. And logic isn't always the be-all, end-all when we're betting sports, believe me. We see a Brooklyn Nets sideline coach stick his hand out last night and deflect the ball in order to win a game for the Nets. So logic and handicapping angles don't always get us there. But I think that common sense logic in this one, handicapping, would direct me towards over 53.5.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree
Jesse?
too, especially with the 53.5 opening up those two 54 and 55 numbers for you. I go back to that first half line though. I mean, if you can get a 27.5, that number is just so much more appealing, giving you the 17-10, the 14-13, the 14-10, or 16-10 of those possibilities. And history tells us that if Kansas City's offense is going to struggle, it's because they're going to start slow.
And if it goes that way, John, to your point about in-game, you're not only winning your first half bet under, but chances are in-game that 53.5 is coming down to about 48.5 or something, and you're betting over that number, looking for the big second half. And at least recent history tells us you get it, right? Because I think I said it was 14-9 at halftime last year, and the game went well over. And real quick here, the game earlier this season, October 10th, was 24-13 half Buffalo. So that one was over in the first half, but the playoff game last year was not. So however you're going to dice it up. But again, I just think, when you play as many of these games as we do, we know where the key numbers lie and where our best advantages lie. And as far as numbers in the 50s go for totals, getting it off that 55 and getting it below that 54 to me is a big deal if you're playing over. If you're playing under, you're playing under. And it's probably a big deal for you too, because you lose a lot of value on under when you lose those two numbers. So I think that was a big move. I don't understand it. And one more thing I want to say to you real quick, John, when that Eagles line came down the last hour, all the way down to +7, I think they went off, right? But I think we have to look at – I think you have to look at these NFL playoff games differently, because that money that comes in the last hour wouldn't bother me at all, because that's all those guys lined up in the casinos with the $100 just betting, or tailing, whatever. And I think all that money was, I don't like to get into public sharp, but I think the hour before kickoff is public money for sure. Sharps are done betting. They're not betting anymore. So that was probably all public sentiment towards the Eagles. Everybody thought they had a little something. Did the two favorites win the night before? The Eagles went Sunday afternoon. The favorite was Cincinnati.
5-1.
Yeah, so, it's another thing. Oh, a dog's got to win. That type of money uses that kind of logic too. So I don't know if that should have scared you, but the Tampa Bay bet was solid. I mean, you win from start to finish. You were never in doubt in that game.
It was a snoozer, but it was a good one. In fact, Jesse and I were going to do a live halftime show from the sports bar where I was at, and there was nothing to talk about. I couldn't even find anything in the database to talk about that would be worthwhile. So we decided not to do it.
And it would have been such a letdown after such an entertaining halftime show for the first game, which turned out to be quite a finish in that game. That was, even though I was on the wrong side of, I had the Raiders +5.5.
Yeah.
That was a hell of a game to watch, I got to say.
Well, I don't know necessarily, because, I was in the halftime show, I said to take the Raiders in the money line because of that. When that team scores in the regular season, let alone the playoffs, after the home team just put up 7 on you and you come right back in that last minute and 50 seconds and score again. Because my first question, this was on stage, Rob, was I figured the score was still 20-6, and I asked him, and he says, no, it's 20-13. I don't have a Canadian accent like he has, but that's what he said, and I was like, oh my God. So then right away I go in the database and pull out all the nuggets I know are there. And, it did work out, but, I mean, the Raiders were what, 9-yard line?
Yeah.
I mean, they were right there to tie it up.
Twice. I mean,
and I think
back-to-back drives, they had that opportunity to get that cover for us. Not to actually win the game, but as far as covering the 5.5.
Right.
And then they had to opt for the field goal, which made it a 7-point game. But, yeah, they were right there in the red zone with the opportunity to get that touchdown that would have made all the difference. And, they went 0-2 in the red zone there as far as scoring touchdowns and had to settle for that field goal.
And I think, Jesse, guys, on that last drive, real quick on that last drive, I think that when they completed that pass to the 9, I think the biggest mistake they made was spiking the ball with 29 seconds left. They gave themselves only 3 chances to score. They really had time enough. When you're at the 9-yard line, You
Run
probably
it.
even have time enough to complete an 8-yard pass to the 1 and get up to the line of scrimmage. It's 7 yards away. You're not going to run out of time. So they probably killed themselves there. And one last point real quick about that game, guys, because I was on the other end of that game. I was on total over 48.5. That game had 11 scores, 11 scoring drives in that game. 8 of them were field goals. So that just goes to you need touchdowns. One team kicked 4 field goals. The other team kicked 4 field goals. The opportunities inside the red zone weren't just those last 2 for the Raiders. They were a shitload of them all game long for the Bengals as well, especially early. You take that game where you have 11 scoring drives and only wind up with 45 points, and then watch the Chiefs Steelers the next night where there's only 9 scoring drives and you get 63, almost 20 points more on 2 less scoring drives. Just shows you the difference in these games, especially when you're betting totals between touchdowns and field goals. And the Raiders, I believe, had the worst red zone offense defending TDs in the league this year.
Yeah.
Cincinnati couldn't push one in. They just kept kicking field goals and leaving the Raiders hanging around and kicking field goals. So, it's dicey. We try and look, as best as you can handicap and project, you try and look for teams that produce touchdowns rather than field goals, but it doesn't always work out that way.
Before we get to our best bets for the show, I wanted to ask Jesse, since he is the Iceman, what in the hell is going on with the Nashville Predators? They get up 3-0 in their previous game, I believe, against the Dallas Stars, and lose 5-3. They on this home, was it a 6 or 7 or 8 game home stand, right? They've won 1 game and lost the rest of them. I do know they're 0-3-1 right now, so basically 0-4. Previous to that, they were 12-1-1 going back to December 4th and played as one of the hottest teams in the NHL, averaging 3.85 goals per game and giving up 2.42 for a differential of 1.4, which is incredibly good, or even a short period of time. So I'm looking at this line, minus 340 against the Canadians, who, granted, are not good. They're not the same team they were last year. They just got their 3rd win since like December 4th, I think it is. But do you see any value like betting Montreal on the puck line? I don't think you would in a million years do the puck line with the Predators, but you're the expert, so it'd be okay if you did. But do you think Montreal on the puck line is smart?
The puck line is the way I'd take that. I think there's a lot more value in taking the puck line than trying to hit that big dog at plus 280 or plus 260 or whatever it is.
I don't think I've ever seen a team like at least the NHL, that was so good, and then they had that loss as a minus 300 favorite, and you would know who it was, and it was at home, and they lost outright. And from that point now, the last 5 games, they have just been like chaotic. So I wanted to get your expertise with the NHL, since that is something in addition to everything else that you're good at. You're especially good at that.
Well, I got to be honest, I haven't really paid too much attention to the Nashville Predators recently. I've been focused on other angles, different teams, but I would suspect, to go on a run like that and blow those kind of leads, they obviously have a problem with their goaltending, and the confidence of the starting goaltender would be in question. And everything you're describing to me, without actually looking at it myself, everything you're describing to me sets up for a great play on Montreal on the puck line. But my play today, which is my free play at SportsMemo, is just riding that trend that I discussed on this show on December 1st with the Seattle Kraken. And I can apply that to this Nashville game. You look at Nashville, and what did you say, minus 330?
Yeah, it might be higher.
So they're minus.
And I apologize. It's the Winnipeg Jets. It's the dog.
The Winnipeg Jets.
Yep.
Well, they're a significantly better team than Montreal. So to get them on the puck line would be even better value. But I want to compare that to the Seattle Kraken, who have a far worse record than the Winnipeg Jets, and the the the, the bettors just keep on backing this Kraken team, and I just can't see why. And I said this on the show on December 1st. I said, I'm looking at the lines every game. The Kraken are like either a pick 'em or they're plus 140, plus 150. So you're very, very rarely expected to even lay 2-1 to bet against practically the worst team in the NHL,
Yeah.
an expansion team made up of offcasts from other teams that they didn't want or they didn't want to feel like they needed to hold on to. And I said, I know why this is happening. It's happening because the Vegas Golden Knights came into the league as an expansion team. They had incredible success. And I think people expect and want to see that happen again with Seattle. They're hoping, they're dreaming, but it's not going to happen. And it's probably never going to happen again. What happened with Las Vegas was a once in a lifetime thing. It was kind of similar to something like Leicester City winning the Premier League. You'll see that once in 100 years. But expansion teams generally are terrible, and the Kraken are terrible. And since I've said the lines have been off in Kraken games, I've been betting against them almost every game, and they are 3-13 since December 1st. And tonight they're a favorite. They're a favorite against a team that's currently sitting in a playoff spot. So they're playing the Sharks. The Sharks are currently holding on to the last wild card spot. And, they need to keep their head above water to make the playoffs. And the Kraken are probably looking at that number 1 overall draft pick because that's a lot more realistic than a playoff spot. So, just based on the odds alone, whether, whatever you think, maybe you think the Kraken have a good shot, maybe you like them at home. They're coming off a win, but as a favorite, with the record they have, losing 13 of their last 16, no way.
Yeah, I did give it out as a puck line play, just a little 3-unit thing, but we'll have to see. I mean, it's plus 275. I'll take that.
Well, I was going to say don't take the money line if it's Montreal, but the sprinkle might be well worthwhile with Winnipeg.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, Montreal's got some issues since they, that run in the playoffs last year. They lost Shea Weber. They've been without Carey Price all season. There's lots of issues in Montreal, and Winnipeg's got their issues as well. But for the most part, they still have a pretty solid lineup.
Yep. Just checking the wagertalk.com/odds, which is by far the best page to look for odds that show all the different books. Let's see what we got here. Oh, another, there's 2 huge dogs tonight. Montreal at Las Vegas. And I'm surprised that actually didn't go to 6.5 on the total, but it didn't. But it's minus 330. I just think that's insane because they're not. They're one of the worst home team records in the NHL. And just because they're playing Montreal doesn't mean that they're just going to steamroll them. But they might. That's just the game probably to stay away from. But
I have something of interest for you, John. The last 7 head-to-head meetings between Winnipeg and Nashville, Winnipeg is 7-0 on the puck line.
There you go. And guys, I apologize because I was thinking of the Montreal Las Vegas matchup as the minus 360, which is down to minus 300. But here, Winnipeg is actually a 140 dog. But the point is, all the points that you made are still the same. Like, Nashville should not be favored in this matchup the way they're playing. They're just not. They're playing god awful. So, puck line would be. Let's see what it is. It's probably about even money.
Winnipeg is 5-2 straight up in the last 7 meetings, and the two games they lost were 1-goal games.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive on the puck line for whatever reason with Winnipeg. So the market's telling us exactly what we've been talking about, that Winnipeg money line is a good play. And then Montreal, with the chaos of Las Vegas losing as much as they do at home, you can get +1.5 or +125 right now, just about everywhere I'm looking. Anyway, let's move on to the round of best bets. I have another show coming up at 7. I'm sure you guys do too. It's that time of the year, right? Why don't we lead off with Rob and then Jesse and then myself?
All right. Well, I'll start. And I'll just use the NBA play that is up at wagertalk.com right now. So if you're listening to the show, don't go by it. But I'm playing Golden State first half, -8 points against Indiana. Pacers obviously on a back-to-back situation here. But they've chosen to take tonight as a complete night of rest for everybody. Already a team with Miles Turner out of the lineup, their center. A team with Malcolm Brogdon, who just came back last night to play point guard for them off an Achilles injury. They won't play him on back-to-backs tonight. He's listed as out. You've lost your center. You've lost your point guard. They're starting shooting guard, Karis LeVert, now listed as doubtful. And they're starting power forward, Domantas Sabonis. They're going to give him a night of rest. You got 4 or 5 starters. They're just going to rest. It's a complete almost backup session here for the Indiana Pacers. Golden State, on the other hand, with everybody except Draymond Green. Golden State guys had been shooting terribly for about a 7 to 10-day period. I think 6 out of 7 games, this team that ranks inside the top 5 in almost every shooting percentage category shot 42% or less from the field 6 of 7 games. Last game they snapped out of it. I think they had Detroit 66-38 at half. A couple of games prior to that, they were winning a game 73-47 at half as well. Steve Kerr is kind of a master at getting big leads and then just bringing his guys to the bench. He doesn't leave them to hang around for the second half. So I think that Golden State probably makes fast work of Indiana here, who again is on a back-to-back situation. John talked a little bit about rest against unrested. We've heard an awful lot about that. Ralph Michaels, I know, had a big post earlier this morning showing you 5-6 different ways where rested teams have benefited point spread wise this year against unrested teams. We have that situation here, plus all the injuries. Give me Golden State -8 first half.
That sounds real good, Rob. Next on deck is Jesse Schul, the Iceman. I mean, he does kind of look like an Iceman.
I wish I looked more like Val Kilmer in Top Gun, but if in the right lighting, if you turn the lights down, maybe I'll do that for you. But anyways, I'm looking at a game in the Pac-12 that was really cool. I had it all loaded and ready to be a premium pick, and I backed out at the last second because Oregon State is 3-13 overall on the year, and they're a 2.5-point favorite against Washington. And you got to have balls to bet on a 3-13 team as a favorite, but I think that is actually the correct line here. I think Oregon State has been playing better basketball. They had some issues with COVID and some injuries, so they're perhaps a lot better than that record would indicate. And historically, if you look at the last 10 head-to-head meetings between these two teams, the home team has won 8 of the last 10. If you look at the scoring, recently Oregon State's playing pretty damn good, really. They're averaging 76 plus points per game for their last 5, and they're allowing a little less than that. Washington is not a strong team offensively. They've failed to average 70 points per game in their last 5. Washington, not a great road team. They don't perform that well on the road. Of course, teams that can't score and teams that shoot poorly don't tend to do very well on the road. And you got that home court advantage here for Oregon State. I think they're a team that's undervalued right now and a team that's starting to play a lot better. So my recommendation, though, would be to lay the juice on the money line, say -135, instead of those 2.5 points, because how many college games are decided by 2 points or less? A lot. So I think it's well worth taking a stab at Oregon State on the money line.
Good stuff, Jesse, and I've had several of them. I think I'm about 50-50 being the dog or the fire hydrant for the season, thank God. But it does seem like 2 plays I had yesterday were, half-point loss and a 1-point win, based on the closing line. Sometimes you get lucky when you enter them into the portal on our sites and you get an early line because you want to get it out to people, but not everybody gets it in the morning because they don't check their emails because they're working. And I get all that, but there seems to be an inordinate amount of games that come down to that final shot. And enough bad beats to have Teddy Covers write a book just on this one season. So, guys, I'm going out on the limb here, and I thought I'd make it exciting. I'm looking at the San Francisco college basketball team going up against Gonzaga. I'm on San Francisco plus the points, and yes, I am sprinkling the money line. I think it's way too many points, obviously. It's supported by a betting system that you're going to bet on a game involving 2 very good teams based on their win percentage being 80% or higher. And it's a conference matchup, and with the one conference foe, the favorite, coming off a road blowout win of 20 or more points, the dog in these matchups is 87-42 in one push. Against the spread, that's 67% winning bets over the last 25 basketball seasons. And over the last 25 basketball seasons, that little gem of a betting system has had only 3 money-losing seasons. So I'm going to take a shot here, and I'm going to do 80% plus the points. And this is a 4% premium bet over at SportsMemo.com. It's part of a 3-pack that I release to clients. And normally I would do 90% on the spread, 10% money line, but this is all intuition, and the intuition could be not even worth a piece of toilet paper, but 80% on the line, 20% money line, and let's see what happens here. I just have a feeling. San Francisco's 10-4 against the number when lined as a double-digit dog to up to 15 points against these Gonzaga Zags. So as you know, I'm on San Francisco plus the points. So gentlemen, that brings us to the end. It's always a great time. We'll have to see if we can start making these happen more often. I won't be able to do one tomorrow, but maybe we can schedule one for Friday. On Sports Memo TV, Jesse is part of a college basketball show that did pretty well this past week. We do an NBA show with Ronald Kabang. We are hitting 69% over 21 shows between the two of us. It's just, we went 0-3 on Monday, and then came back with a 3-0 on Wednesday. But it's been just one heck of a run for 21 shows. Remember last summer, you guys, when we went on that tear and we were, up a ton over, I think it was over 45 shows. So there's still a lot of work to go. Jesse's on what is it again? 11-0, 11-1?
17-0 basketball. If you take the 9-0 NBA and 8-0 college.
And alive, that's good. And of course, Rob Veno is the 2-time defending Wagertalk king in the NBA. So make sure you get over to the sites and get their picks. Get a subscription. 30 days. I know. I believe Wagertalk is running a special right now for that, or they're running an annual. They're always running something at both sites. So take advantage of the expertise that these guys bring to the table. And on behalf of Ron Veno, the Iceman, and JR, I don't have a nickname. Remember, always bet with your head, not over it. And may all the wins be yours.